Okay, hi there. Welcome to my just quick walkthrough of the strategy that I was using to farm Kalphite King. So when I was using this, I was kind of going for the solo world record, but this rotation's like fairly doable just for farming kills as well. It is aimed at higher level players, and it has a few kind of advanced things that you need to know. Including like being able to count ticks and global cooldowns and being comfortable with ability stalling. So that's just a word of warning before I go into this. Yeah, I'm just going to talk through a couple of kills. I would just go through my 14-second kill, but I did mess up a tiny bit, so I'm just going to take samples from two different kills just to kind of talk about things. So yeah, so this first kill, this is the 14-second kill, but I'm just going to go over the first half of it. So that was the end of the previous kill, and I'm just going to bank here. I'm just going to pause on the bank preset. So basically, you'll be wearing full best in slot melee gear. You need vestments. You need at least 3 pieces of vestments, although it's strongly recommended you have 4. But yeah, bare minimum 3 vestment pieces because you need the extended Zerk duration. And then just standard stuff like Cinderbanes and Reaver's Ring and Grimoire. And you'll be using Zerk Aura as well, with Elder Overload, ideally. And you should be equipping Deathspore arrows. And yeah, so they're the main things that you're wearing. There are 3 EOFs, one of which is, well, basically you need 2 of them, and the third one is optional. So in the preset, I was wearing the Abyssal Vine Whip EOF, which obviously most people don't have, but if you are doing this strategy, it's strongly recommended that you use it. So you can always swap out another EOF for it. So that's one I'm wearing, and that's the one you use first in the rotation. That's why I'm wearing it. But in the inventory, I also have Dragon Claw EOF, which you definitely need because that's literally just spamming claws in this rotation. So, and then the third EOF is optional, which is just Granite Maul EOF, which you don't need, but it adds a bit of damage in the fight. So if you're comfortable using it, then there's no issue. Yeah, but throwing it in there. And I am wearing Excalibur and Dragon Battle Axe in the preset just because, my Excalibur has mobile on it, so when I'm surging around PvM hub, I don't have to worry about like surge and BD cooldowns as much. And in terms of the inventory, you basically just want the best overloads you have, ideally Elder Overloads. You want an Adrenaline Renewal Potion, although technically you could get away with this Enhanced Replenishment Potion, although use Adrenaline Renewal Potions if you have them. And then just a few bits of food. Spiritual, you don't really need the Spiritual, but I just bring it because you'll be using a Calg for this, so it's nice just to have the replenishment of the points, summoning points. And in terms of weapons, you basically want Lengs. You want dual wield Lengs, definitely. You'll be using the main hand Leng for the special attack, and the offhand Leng is so that you can uncouple it's basically so you can use Hurricane with dual wield on. And then, quite importantly, which this is another strongly recommended thing, is basically you want a Keris and a Desert Amulet 3 or 4. Ideally a 4 if you have it. Basically the Keris and Desert Amulet combined are like best in slot melee weapons at the boss, because the proc chance of Keris is doubled, and that helps you do a lot of extra damage. And yeah, they're basically the main things you need. Oh, also something important as well is you want a clear-headed ball switch. So clear-headed 4 is a perk that extends the duration of your anticipation. Basically you want the increased duration on the stun immunity, so that you can basically spend your entire Zerk without getting stunned by the boss. So I put that on my Ancient Defender here. You can put it on anything, although I'd recommend putting it on a weapon piece, because you ideally want your vestments to be on throughout the entire build. Unless for some reason you have Clear-Headed 4 and a vestment swap, which, I mean, some of you might, so... yeah, and then they're the main bits, and then just various other things. Oh, I guess there's 2 other main bits that I forgot. You want a bow as well, because you're equipping Deathsport arrows, and you'll be using Deathsport arrows in the build. And along with the bow, you also need Greater Ricochet, because that's like very, very important for the build, because you'll basically be sitting on 4 Deathsport stacks, and Greater Ricochet will, on average, or most of the time, it will get you up to 5 Deathsport stacks, and it will give you lots of adrenaline as well. So basically, you need that. You need a bow, Deathsport arrows, which are equipped, and Greater Ricochet. And I don't know why I have an ECB here. I actually don't use the ECB at all, so just ignore that. And then I've got a Ring of Death as well, because sometimes you'll need to tank a green from KK, and the Ring of Death can actually save you if you don't prepare for the green properly. And then in terms of the rune pouches, you basically just want to be able to cast a targeted spell such as Smoke Cloud or Vulnerability. That's just to release the stored ability that you do at the start of the fight. I'm using 3 rune pouches, and I'm on Lunas because I've got Smoke Cloud on my borrowed power, and it gives me access to Vengeance and Disruption Shield, so that's what I'm using there. And we also have Vuln Bombs because, free damage, and a combat dummy. You just need 1 combat dummy for this. But yeah, I think that's the overview for the whole inventory. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. So yeah, basically just after the kill, you obviously just bank, and then you just run to this crystal, and you want the Kalphite King portal on the east portal, because you'll be using this combat dummy, this PvM hub combat dummy, and it basically just means that you're closer to the dummy, and it makes various things easier. So definitely use the east portal if you can. So after the kill, just use the crystal to get yourself up to full adren, and don't deviate at this point. You basically want to get up to 3 Deathspore stacks at this point. I think this recording, I didn't actually see what I used there actually. Yeah, this recording was before they changed Piercing Shot. So Piercing Shot at the time of recording only hit once, so that's why it only gave me 1 hit there. But at the time of this video, Piercing Shot hits twice now, so you could just do an auto attack and Piercing Shot, and that would get you up to 3 Deathspore stacks. Yeah, you get 3 Deathspore stacks on the dummy. You have to make sure the dummy's in max hit mode, just so that you have guaranteed crits. So 3 Deathspore stacks on the dummy, and then optionally you can use Dragon Battle Axe spec here. I'd only use it if you are on task, and I'd strongly recommend you're on task. It does obviously help a lot, particularly with accuracy. So yeah, I'd recommend being on task and having the Anachronia Slayer Helm stand, so that you can get the passive Slayer Helm boost, and obviously Genocidal perk as well on your gear. But I mean, you may not choose to use Dragon Battle Axe spec. I think it only adds a little bit of damage because of hit caps and things, and it obviously reduces your hit chance. But I was using it here because I wanted to get as fast kills as possible. But that's just optional. So if you have a Dragon Battle Axe spec, use it there. And at this point, you have your bow equipped, and you just store Incendiary Shot on the dummy. So it's important to keep in combat between hitting the dummy and stalling Incendiary Shot, so that you can stall it. So after you stall it, you just build up to forward round. I built up to 125 here because I will be using a basic after I release and send, so that will get me up to 130. Oh yeah, also I forgot to mention, you should be using heightened senses for this, just because conservation of energy isn't as useful for the rotation. Having the higher max adrenaline is definitely more useful. So heightened senses plus Berserker's Fury, or you can use Fury of the Small. It doesn't really matter too much, but heightened senses for sure. So at this point, after you've stored it and built to full, you just run to this approximate spot on the stairs, and you release your incendiary shot on the dummy. You can either click the dummy, or you can release it with a spell, like the spell I have equipped here, Smoke Cloud here. And as soon as you release it, you want to be using an ability that hits once, basically. So in this case, I used it with Piercing Shot, but don't use it with Piercing Shot because that will now hit twice. So instead, probably use Dazing Shot or Binding Shot or something like that. So you basically just release your incendiary shot, use a basic ability to hit once, which will get you up to 4 Death Spore stacks, and immediately turn around and surge during global cooldown back towards the portal. And you'll notice here that I've equipped my main hand Leng. This is because between releasing your incendiary shot and when it actually explodes, you want to equip a melee weapon so that basically, because if your incendiary shot crits whilst you have a bow on, then it will give you a Death Spore stack, and that will take you up to 5, which you don't want. You want to stay on 4 stacks. But also I equipped the main hand Leng because this is where you use your Leng spec. So when global cooldown ends, you want to be using your Leng spec here. Sorry, it's a bit, when I pause it, it's a bit blurry like that. So yeah, you use your Leng spec here, and you immediately run to the portal. Meanwhile, the incendiary shot will explode as you go through the portal, basically. And once you're through the portal, I'm actually going to swap to the other POV because I don't mess up as much in this one. So use my Leng spec here. I've gone through the portal, and I immediately use Freedom. It doesn't really, I mean, I instinctively do that just to build a Dren in case I need to, but you don't really need to because I was 130 anyway. But you go through the portal, and you immediately, as soon as possible, you re-enter your instance. And this is, remember, you still have your melee weapons equipped. And by this point, I've put my Keras on because I don't need my main hand Leng anymore. So yeah, you enter as soon as possible, and as soon as you can, you basically just use Berserk once you're in the inside, and at the same time use your Adrenaline Renewal Potion because you want to use it as soon as possible, so that the Adren starts ticking up as soon as possible, and you'll see why in just a sec. So you Zerk and Adren pot at the same time, and you see here I've clicked on this spot. It's because I'm Surge Bladed Diving to this spot. The exact spot doesn't matter that much. It's just this kind of general vicinity, because you basically just want to place your dummy underneath where the boss is going to spawn, because of the Vine Whip, which I'll show you in just a sec. So you basically just Surge an A-pot, and you just Zerk an A-pot, and then Surge BD to that approximate spot. And as soon as possible, place your dummy and equip your bow. And ideally, losslessly, you're going to target cycle the dummy and use Greater Ricochet. And because you've got your bow and your Death Spore arrows equipped, there's a very strong chance that one of your Greater Ricochet hits is going to crit. And you basically need at least 1 crit in order to get you up to 5 Death Spore stacks. Ideally, you want more crits than that because you want to also build Adrenaline off the crits because you're in Incendiary Shot crit buff at the moment. So obviously, each crit is going to give you 10 Adren. So you just want you basically want your Greco to actually hit like a lot of crits on the dummy. And here it kind of like fluffs a little bit, but I do get 1 stack, which is fine. So you want to do all of that losslessly, so you don't want to miss any ticks here. And after Greco, you want to use Piercing Shot, which is especially good now that they've changed it so that it hits twice. And by this point, there is a very, very strong chance that you're on 5 Death Spore stacks. So you've basically got your next ranged ability is going to be free to use. If you didn't get the Death Spore proc, that is kind of like very unlikely. So you just consider yourself unlucky at that point. But the majority of the time you will get you'll get both 100 adren and you'll get the death spell proc. So after those 2 range abilities, you want to put on melee weapons on again. Oh, sorry, actually no, not right at the moment. So you want to use Greco and then piercing shot, and then with your bow still equipped, you want to use your death spell natural instinct. So you just use natural instinct and it won't cost any adren because you've got your bow equipped and because you had the death spell proc. You also want to make sure you don't attack the dummy at this point. You just want to click off the dummy because you're going to channel your greater barge very soon. So after your natural instinct, you want to equip your melee weapons and use your EOF spec. And because you've got the Vine Whip EOF equipped, it's basically going to cast Vine Whip on the dummy. And if you don't know what Vine Whip does, it's like a greater barge damage over time, except it's a lot less powerful. But it lasts longer. I think it hits 10 times in total, and it's also AoE, so that's important because basically throughout the fight, this Vine Whip is going to be hitting this dummy. And because the boss is on top of the dummy, every time it actually hits 2 targets. It hits the dummy and it hits the boss. And that basically just gives you loads of adren throughout the fight because it can crit, so it'll refund lots of adren, but it also does damage, obviously. And the hits themselves, as far as I know, they can also proc Keris. They can also, proc your Keris, so they do extra damage. It's basically just free damage throughout the fight, so that's why you're using it. Also, when you use Vine Whip spec, you make sure that you cancel your movement. You're basically stalling the spec. So you see here, I use the spec and I click at the same time, which cancels the movement because you don't want to run into MD and hit the dummy with your melee weapon because that will cancel your greater barge buff. So at this point, you get the greater barge buff and you pre-barge on the dummy, and then you walk approximately in this place because that's in melee distance of where the boss is going to spawn, and you equip your Clear-Headed 4 perk, which in this case is on my Ancient Defender. So you equip that and then you use Anticipation, and that gives you 14 seconds of stun immunity, which basically pretty much lasts you until the end of your Zerk, which is kind of perfect. And then after this, you want to equip your Dragon Claw EOF, because after Anticipation, you're going to immediately stall your claws. You see here, I stall my claws, and I place a Vaunt Bomb as well. And this whole sequence of abilities should perfectly align with the spawn timing of the boss. So as soon as you stall claws, on the next global cooldown, you can attack the boss. So in terms of what you do on the first tick, you can either target cycle the boss or you can click the boss. There's no difference in timing. I chose to click because it was more consistent for me, because target cycle sometimes breaks. But essentially what you want to do, because you've got stalled claws, you want to release your claws and you want to use Assault Bleed at the same time. So you basically want to use your Smoke Cloud and Assault Bleed at the same time after you click the boss. If you have a Granite Maul EOF at this point, you can also equip it in the same tick for 1 or 2 Granite Maul specs, which I think I do here. I can't remember if I think I just use 1 Granite Maul spec. That's just optional. You don't need to use Granite Maul. So yeah, that's what you do on the first tick. So these 2 are claws hits, and this bottom one I think is a Vine Whip hit actually. But this one here is a Granite Maul hit. But yeah, that's optional. So once you've done that, depending on what sequence of keybinds you did, and depending on whether you use Granite Maul or not, what you may be wearing at this point is kind of dependent on what you did. But ideally, you would be wearing your Desert Army at this point. So the idea with Kalphite King kills is that you want to, even though you're using EOFs, you want to be equipping your Desert Army for as long as possible, because Keris procs, or the proc chance is doubled whilst you're wearing the Desert Army. And so yeah, essentially, you basically want to use your EOF and then immediately switch back to the Desert Army. So that's what I did here. I actually, in the same tick that I did my Assault Bleed and stuff, I switched to my Desert Army. But you may wish to click it from your inventory. So after this first GCD, what you want to do is, I can't remember how many claws it is. I think it's 5. Yeah, you use claws 5 times in a row at this point. And your adrenaline should be pretty good because you've got Natural Instinct, you've got Incendiary Shot, crit buffs, you're spamming claws, there's lots of hit splats, but also you've got your Bind Whip doing damage and hitting 2 targets at the same time. So there's lots of hit splats going on, so you'll get loads of adrenaline refunds. So in most cases, you should be able to spam claws 5 times in a row with no problem. And that's essentially what you just do. So you want to equip for each GCD you use claws, you want to equip your EOF and immediately switch back to your Desert Army. So that's what I do here. You'll check my inventory here. I just literally just place my cursor on that spot. And I equip my EOF, I use my claws, and then I equip my Desert Army immediately. So you basically just do that 5 times. 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the 5th, sorry. I think that's the 5th, yeah. And at that point, after your 5 claws, you've only got 1 GCD left in your Zerk. So you may choose to use another claws, although what I prefer to do is basically just use Hurricane and Granite Maws at the end. You may not have Granite Maws, in which case you're probably better off just using claws on its own. But if you do have Granite Maws, Granite Maw EOF, you basically at the end you just use your Hurricane, equip your EOF, and spam claws all on the same tick, essentially. Spam Maws all on the same tick. So that's what I do here, and I got unlucky. I was 7 HP off. I was 7 HP off 14.4, which was my goal. So I ended up getting a 15. But that's essentially the rotation. The key points, if I just watch this all in, we'll go through the whole thing, and my 8 hard drives being slow. Alright, we're good. Alright, we'll go through the whole thing. Yeah, so getting 3 Death Spore stacks, and then going to the Adrenaline Crystal, using your Dragon Battle Axe if you have it. If you don't, you just skip that, and then you just stall Incendiary Shot on the dummy. And then once you're back to full HP, you walk to the spot, and you release your Incendiary Shot, and you use a basic ability, and you turn around, you Leng Spec, and you keep your weapons on, and then use Freedom or whatever, enter, Zerk and Apot, Surge BD to the spot, place the dummy, equip your bow, target cycle, and Greater Ricochet, and then Piercing Shot, and then Natural Instinct, which should be free because of Death Spore. Equip your melee weapons and use Abyssal Vine Whip spec, and make sure that you cancel your movement, so you stall it. I got lucky because of a Relentless proc. And then you barge. Equip your Clear-Headed 4 and your Claws EOF at this point, and then use Anticipation. Stall your Claws, and then ensure you've got Keris and Offhand Leng equipped. And then click the boss, use Assault Bleed with Granite Maws if you want, and equip your Desert Army as well. And then basically just spam claws. So you've got, that's claw number 1, claw number 2, claw number 3, claw number 4, claw number 5. And then at the end, you want to either just use another set of claws, or if you've got Granite Maw EOF, you want to use Hurricane and Granite Maws. Just spam them at the end, basically. And if you get good RNG, you'll get it pretty low, or if you get very good RNG, you'll kill it. If you get good RNG, it should be quite low at this point. If you get average RNG, it'll probably be like, I don't know, 40k at this point or something. At which point you just, you're out of Zerk, you probably just spam, you probably just use Limitless and use Slaughter and SGB and stuff. But most of the time you should be getting kills between 14 seconds and about 30 seconds-ish. Depending, if you get bad RNG with the specs, you might get kills up to like 40 seconds or so. So yeah, it's pretty fast kills. It's pretty fun. I'm sure there's ways of getting more kills per hour than this. But I found it quite fun. So, to be fair, if something's fun, it makes you want to do it more. So yeah, that's kind of the end of my ramble. I think this is quite a long video, unfortunately, but I hope it was useful, and feel free to ask any questions in the comments. I don't know if I'm actually going to publish this, but if you see this public, then hello.